So I just want to get into the meat of this.
You're live, Chris.
All right. It's looking a little different on here, Mr. Producer. I'm just seeing the three panels. Is there a different way of looking at this? Am I missing something here?
And we're
I need
doing
to go to work.
something different on Zoom, so that's what we got today.
Okay. All right. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Blunt Force Conservative Podcast. We didn't have one last Saturday because I was in travel status heading over to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. My sister and my wife and her two sisters had gone to a concert. I think they initially thought they were going to see the Eagles, which I didn't think it was, and it turned out to be a tribute band, but it was still a good time. I got to spend some great time with my dad. And of course, it's always great to visit the Holy Lands of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the center of the football universe. Just 4 more weeks until kickoff. We're going to have a great show today. We're going to save our shout outs toward the end. And I'll talk a little bit about what's been going on since I last spoke with everyone here. We've had some great responses and to the podcast. If you've got any ideas, anything that you want to see on here, some people that you want me to try to get on the podcast, everybody knows I'm still on the hunt now trying to get Victor Davis Hanson on. And I am going back and forth with his handler. He is very booked up, but I'm going to keep trying at it. So, my guest today is Rob Chadwick. Now, Rob and I are both retired FBI agents. I think he came in a few years after I did and stayed a few years after I left. And once he left the FBI, he does a lot of training, a lot of speaking engagements, and he's working with the U.S. Conceal Carry Association. Mr. Producer, if you can pull up that webpage, I've got a screenshot here of the webpage with for U.S. Concealed Carry. Now, when you go out there and search for U.S. Concealed Carry, make sure you hit the actual website that we have there. So that will that will at least get you to this page right here is what you should see when it first pops up. And then that moves us into my guest today, which is Mr. Rob Chadwick. I didn't realize it was John Rob Chadwick. And he pretty much looks like he sounds. So when you see that picture of him, if you hear him on the radio and some of these advertisements, that's pretty much what he looks like. He looks like what he sounds like. He sounds like what he looks like. And Rob has got a great career in the FBI, really good on the tactical stuff. And I know he's going to provide us some great information today. He is also on X. Here he is at USCCA Rob, and there's a link right there to his book that he has written that's on Amazon, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But let's go ahead and welcome in Rob Chadwick. Rob, welcome to the show.
Chris, thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, Rob, we're going to start this off pretty basic. We were both FBI agents. I've told my story on here that way back in 1970, when I was 6 years old, is when my first recollection of wanting to be an FBI agent. Tell us your story about how you became, the path you took, and what was your first recollection that this is the ultimate goal here? I want to be an FBI agent.
Well, Chris, we both grew up in a time when the FBI obviously was revered, and I actually have an uncle who served as an FBI agent, obviously long before I did. And, growing up, I had a large law enforcement family, uncles, several uncles who were in law enforcement, including the one that was the FBI agent. And so law enforcement was sort of a natural calling for me. I grew up in suburban Washington, D.C., in Fairfax County, just outside the Pentagon there. And lots of my friends were, soldiers' kids growing up. And So I just felt that calling to law enforcement the whole time, and started my career with Fairfax County Police Department. Did 7 years with them. Got to be a canine handler, and really thought that was going to be the sort of the apex of my career. Is that I will tell you, local canine handler is the greatest job in law enforcement. There's no more fun job. You're in every hot call you can imagine. Not a single day goes by that something really interesting doesn't happen. So that was a lot of fun for me. But as a kid growing up, I always sort of aspired, had that aspirational, I wonder if I could do that same thing. And so my uncle Horace was an agent, and matter of fact, he was one of the guys that helped start the FBI's hostage rescue team back in 1983. Horace was a Vietnam era Green Beret, and just a quiet professional type of guy that I always looked up to and admired, and tried to emulate. And as I was serving as a policeman, I thought, why not? Let me throw that application in, and so of course I waited I think it was 3 years full-time work experience plus college degree, and my 3-year anniversary with the police department, I threw my name in the hat, and I almost immediately got rejected by the FBI. And so I was really angry, and I thought, well, I don't need to go FBI, forget it. And then of course the kind of that when you try something you don't get it, you want it more. And so my wife and I decided, you know what, this might be right for the family. We had a young family at the time, and just kept applying. And it took me 5 years to get in, ultimately. And it was worth it, of course. I had an absolutely charmed career. As a matter of fact, I talk about Uncle Horace. I got to carry his creds and his badge when I was sworn in as a new agent. He was on stage with me with Director Free and presented me with his credential number, 3121, which was pretty wild. Much lower than all the rest of my classmates, of course. First office was in Miami. Spent time at headquarters in a couple of different divisions, counterintelligence division, inspection division for 2 years, which was an interesting experience, and then went back to the field for most of my career in Columbia, South Carolina. Got to be the PFI there. Was on the SWAT team there. And then went back up when my kids were in college, went up to the Attorney General's detail, and was one of Bill Barr's full-time guys. That was one of the highlights of my career. Attorney General Barr is a big hero of mine, and just an incredible patriot, just utterly devoted to the Constitution of the United States. And then when it was pretty clear he wasn't going to be coming back, regardless of the outcome of that election, I started looking for another job, and ultimately ended up at Quantico as the chief of the Tactical Training Unit. A lot of our peers would remember that as PAU, Practical Applications Unit. But at the time I served, it was the Tactical Training Unit. And, spent a few years there. It was just an absolute blast. So I like I said, had a sort of a charmed career, did everything I wanted to do. And then, with events that we'll talk about, I'm sure, throughout this podcast, it was clear that it was time to get out and do something else.
Well, it's that's similar, a lot of similarity in my path when I came on. I took the time to, I had been focused on it since 1970, and my first foray into law enforcement was as an OSI agent, and that gave me an opportunity to really kind of hone my investigative skills, learn the lingo and the writing and all of that. And I think that benefited me. I hate to hear that it took you 3 years to get through. I threw my name in the hat in May, and the following May I was in the academy. And I hadn't even graduated college yet. I graduated college very late in life. Was already married with a kid, another one on the way, and finished up college during the summer. And they went ahead and accepted the application and got me through. I think I did my the review board about the time that I was getting my diploma. So
Wow.
I had already had more than the 3 years work experience. I went in at 30. Well, I was 35 at the academy. I just recently turned 35. I now just talking a couple of names. When you were in Columbia, South Carolina, was Tom O'Connor's? I mean, not Tom O'Connor. Tom he was the chief division counsel. Tom, I
Tom
think it's
O'Neill.
that. Tom
Yeah.
O'Neill. That's it. Goodness, I don't want to mix him up with O'Connor. That's not a guy I'm a fan of. I was a first office agent with him at Washington Field, and ugh, what that's comments for another day. I have not met too many FBI agents, retired FBI agents, that are high on Tom O'Connor from that. He and his wife Jean, nice enough people. I bumped into him a number of times through my career after I left WFO, and but yeah, we'll get into that another day. What about with when it was called PAU when I was down there? Did you ever run into a guy named Pete Ashew?
That name does not ring a bell. You did mention Tom O'Neill, who is a tremendous friend of mine. Tom was the breacher. I mean, you mentioned he was our chief division counsel. He was also the breacher on our SWAT team for the Columbia Division. And at the time I was on that team for a few years there, we were the oldest team, per capita in the entire FBI. And
Wow.
it was a great team. I tell you, those are some of the best friends I'll have in my life. I know that, and Tom is right up there with them. And I tell you, it's a good feeling to have a chief division counsel right there with the battering ram making those decisions. There were a few times where we say, "Hey, breach her up," and he says, "Sorry, boys, we don't have quite what we need to make that breach." So
Yeah.
he kept us out of trouble. But Tom's a heck of a guy. He's a bear of a man. There's nobody I'd rather go through a door with than Tom O'Neill and or any of the guys on the Columbia SWAT
Yeah.
team for that matter.
Well, if you see Tom, give him my best. I was in Baghdad with him. He was rotation 28. I was rotation 29. He was the supervisor over the negotiations unit that we had there in Camp Cropper Prison in Baghdad. So worked a lot with him. Really good guy. Had a tough time having to manage the group of us because we had some individuals that probably shouldn't have been over there. They were probably a little too young, a little too inexperienced, a little too immature to be in a wartime environment like that. And it's pretty stressful as it is. And if you're not staying task oriented and focused on what you're supposed to do, you can get a bit complacent. You can get a little angry at the situations that you're in. Um, it's not like you can just walk away and leave in Baghdad. It's 7 days a week, 16, 18 hours a day. But Tom was a great guy. I really enjoyed working with him and do give him my best.
Will do.
Now let's talk a little bit about situational awareness. When I had you on the radio show on WYAB earlier this week, we talked about, and maybe our listeners here and viewers would love to hear from you about the things you talked about what you do when you go into a new environment, whether it's a restaurant or a store or a church. What are some things that you do that you do each time that you go in, that you kind of set that up as your muscle memory of stuff that you do?
Yeah, sure thing, Chris. And I appreciate that. And I think it's important to kind of set the tone for why is that even important? Why does it matter to pay attention to what's going on? And one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing now with the USCCA, working with civilians is trying to share those lessons you and I learned, in the academy and then throughout our careers. And ultimately, having been to so many of these tragic situations in the aftermath of whether it's an active shooter or a major crime, it comes down to looking at, so many people. We've seen them. I know you've seen them. It's heartbreaking to see so many people being overcome by events because they had not paid any attention to what was developing around them. There's sometimes you're just completely taken by aware and there's nothing you can do about it, but that's pretty rare. Most of the time, there are warning signals, there are warning signs, there's things that are developing around you, and ultimately, all of us, every single one of us, wants to go home at the end of the day to our families, just get on with our life, and so I want people to understand, which is again why I do what I do with the USCCA. It's why I wrote this book. We'll talk about later, but understand that ultimately the most important thing in any crisis is time. And if you can steal back even just a couple of seconds by being a little more aware, a little more informed about what is happening around you, who's around you, the proximity to you, those types of things, that can inform your decision making. Here's the other part of that, is it's great to be aware of it, but are you prepared to act on it? Are you prepared to get up and walk out of a restaurant? Are you prepared to get up and walk out of a movie theater? Or, you know what, say, I'm just going to disengage and walk away. You see something developing. So many of us are just sort of paralyzed or, suckered into this developing situation. And that sometimes those few seconds that we spend on wasting that precious time can make all the difference in the world. So one of the things I mentioned on the radio show, I think you're alluding to, is just a habit. These are the types of things we talk about, preparing people that are not going to change your life. I don't want people to live in fear. I don't want them to be this hyper vigilant, tackleberry type of person. But I want them to pay attention. I want them to be proactive, be intentional about what you're doing. So, make a practice of, for example, when I walk into any restaurant, it's always a good idea to wash your hands before you eat, right? That's pretty basic. And so I just make a practice. As soon as I walk into the restaurant, whether it's fast food or a sit down place, I make a beeline. And when I say a beeline, I mean a circuitous route to the bathroom. All right. And what I'm doing is, one, I'm looking who's in the restaurant, what's going on in this restaurant, what's kind of the look, tone, and feel, what's the atmosphere, who's sitting where, where are the exits? I'm making note of those in case I have to make an alternate exit plan if something develops with me and my family. And where are the seats or the tables that I want to sit at? And I'm willing to wait for those tables, right? I'm not just going to take the first table available. I will request a certain table, and if they don't want to seat me there, maybe I'll go to a different restaurant, that type of thing. Not trying to be difficult, but being an advocate for myself and my family. So, that first little scouting trip into the restaurant really sets me up. I think I annoy my wife because I do it all the time. I say, hey, I'm just going to wash my hands, be right back. She's on to me now, of course. But that's just a quick down and dirty habit that everybody can get into. You walk in, go wash your hands, scout that restaurant, check out the exits, check out the emergency exits, check out who's sitting where, figure out where you want to seat, where you want to seat yourself and your family. And that just, again, positions you in case something happens. Very unlikely that it will, right? We've all been out to dinner 1,000 times and nothing happens. But it's that one time that if you can, by your intentionality, pick up just a few extra seconds, that could make all the difference in the world for you and your loved ones.
Yeah, I know when we were briefed on our deadly force policy, I note the order of the briefing when you're going to articulate the use of deadly force. And it's typically to protect my life, the life of my fellow law enforcement officers, and the lives of others, in that order. And that's, the one thing that you've got to do is be able to get yourself out of there. With me, I do the same thing. I go in, wash my hands. I'm walking around the restaurant. I usually will scout the opening when I come in. If we go to a restaurant, we're having to wait on a table. There's usually a group there, so I'm just kind of looking around. It's a little different than I do at the airports. You probably get in the same habit that I do in the airports of trying to pick out who the air marshal is, or
Oh
you're
yeah.
looking for the little bulge
Oh
around the
yeah.
ankle, or just you can tell. And you can almost pick up on who the other FBI agents are that are getting on the plane, which it's kind of a little fun game, but it does keep you kind of alert to what's going on. When we were talking about situational awareness, something came up this week, and I had to have a very heart-to-heart conversation with a young kid. And I've told my kids are older now. They're 29, 26, and 22. They can all pretty much handle themselves. But I tell them, walk away, run away so you can run away another day. If you can get away, if you can get distance, that's always the best thing. Distance is your friend. And I tell them, not everybody is a nice guy out there. So you got to be very careful of how you comport yourself with people. So that real quick, this situation we had this week, I do a little bit of soccer officiating in the evening with some adults. It's kind of an adult league. It's just a fun time to get together. I'm mainly out there to kind of de-escalate things so that when somebody has a hard foul, we don't have a fist fight. I remind them this is not school soccer. This is not college soccer. This is not MLS soccer. You fight out here, you go to jail. I just call the chief of police. He sends some cars over. You go to jail. We'll figure it out tomorrow. And everybody's got to go to work the next day. But this young little 19-year-old kid decided he wanted to just keep lacing me with profanity. And I got a pretty high tolerance before I get angry. And when we finished up the game, what I do is if they act up like that, I put them in timeout. I make them sit down. I don't issue cards like you see in soccer. I just don't. Hey, take a seat and you get to watch while everybody else gets to play. Just kind of a little bit of humiliation. If you don't want to sit down, then you can go leave and sit in your car. If you don't want to do that, you can leave the premises. If you don't want to do that, you can go to jail. Your choice. But I'm pretty consistent with that. But he kept dropping the F bombs to me after the event, and I just said, son, let me talk to you a little bit. I'm a pretty nice guy. I cannot be a nice guy, but you're going to come across somebody that's not a nice guy, and you're going to drop that F bomb at the wrong person, and you're going to get yourself hurt. I don't mean beat up. I mean, you're going to get hurt. And of course, he's got the ego that some of these 19-year-olds do when they get out in a group of adults. He's like, well, that wouldn't be a problem. It would be a problem with you. And I'm just kind of nodding my head. I mean, I'm not a young guy anymore. I'm 61, pretty strong. I can handle myself. I'm right at 300 on the bench, and I hit the heavy bag almost every day. So I know how to throw a punch, and I know where to throw it. And I just had to pull one of the other adults aside, another adult in his 30s, and just remind him, hey, you need to get the guy to calm down. He's first of all, I'm not going to let him play out here again if he's going to act like that. And secondly, I don't want to have to hurt him because if I have to hurt him, he's going to the hospital. I mean, it's not going to be pleasant because I'm going to do what I got to do to protect me. Uh,
Yeah, those
is
are
that
tough
similar
situations.
advice you give to people? I mean, I see people flipping people off on the road, and I'm like, hey, I used to be that young guy that would get mad about something like that. But man, you don't know what the other person's going through in their life and what they're willing to do. How do you handle something like that, or what do you brief people about road rage and stuff?
Yeah, it's a great point, Chris. Everybody has some level of ego, of course, and I tell people all the time. I had the same thing, right? I'm in my 50s now, retired, and I'm a grandfather, and try to check that ego, but I have it. But you have to remind yourself constantly of what is important to you, right? Is it important that you go home at the end of the day to your wife, your children, your grandchildren, continue on with your life? Or is it important that you make a point to this nameless, faceless person that you'll probably never see again? And whatever that is, right? Scoring points for your ego, it's ridiculous, okay? The other thing I remind people of is you never know what level of violence that person is capable of or, comfortable with rising to, right? You can't put that genie back in the bottle. So I tell people all the time, check that ego, put it back, back in a drawer, back in your pocket, swallow it. Who cares? Go on with your life, right? And it's not worth it because I can tell you, as working with the USCCA, we have, and for those of your listeners who aren't, familiar with it, USCCA, United States Conceal Carry Association, is an association of about 900,000 people around the country. So we've been around a little over 20 years. And what that means is we have lots of member stories, right? Lots of members who have had interaction with others that result in some type of physical altercation, whether it's with a firearm or with some type of weapon of opportunity or even fists. Sometimes it's simply brandishing a gun. And in almost every single case, especially these days, that is going to result in almost certainly law enforcement, interaction, and now almost certainly some type of civil interaction, right? So there's going to be criminal court, civil court, things you can't even imagine boiling up, all over most of the time. It's something that is totally avoidable, and so I tell people, if you get into an altercation, walk away. Here's the thing, even if your ego won't allow you to do it, right? It's very, very rarely a good idea to take on an opponent at the location and at the time of their choosing, right? You don't want them to set the battlefield. So if your ego won't allow you to just walk away, think tactically, right? Step back and go, wait a minute, this person might be baiting me into a situation here. I don't want to have this altercation here. I want to create time and distance. Most of the time, that's going to resolve it. Time and distance usually is your friend in any situation. But if nothing else, you don't want to engage this adversary again at the time and the location of their choosing, right? With the FBI SWAT team, we would almost want to always dictate the time and location of when we chose to interdict somebody, right? Very rarely would we allow the bad guy to do that. Don't let this stranger do that either. Check your ego, walk away. Chances are you'll never see that person again. Just go on with your life.
That dovetails into, we had this incident in Cincinnati where the young couple was severely beaten. And I don't want to get into, the politics of it or anything like that. But in a situation that they were in, what would be some things that people can kind of put in the back of their mind to add to their toolkit, that if they happen upon a situation like that, we don't have many of those down here in Mississippi, but in a place like Cincinnati and in a New York, having that situational awareness of going in, what would be some of the things? How would you handle it if you got to get through this group? What is your plan?
Wow. I tell you, the best advice there is not put yourself in a position like that at all, right? You're in a location that maybe you're not familiar with. They're certainly not surrounded by people that love and care about you. It's at night. Anytime you're in a crowd, you're in the propensity or the likelihood of violence escalates, right? Because people will do things in a crowd that they would never do individually, right? There's this sense of anonymity, invincibility, especially when it's just you and maybe your loved one. It is time to get out of there, even if it's humiliating, to walk away, covering your head and your vitals, right? To, keeping your back or some part of your body to cover, whether it's a brick wall, whatever it is. Like, guys, I want nothing to do with this. I apologize. I don't know what led to that altercation. I've read, just like everybody else in the media, might have been some alcohol involved, which of course that liquid courage sometimes gets to this, going again. I have no idea. I'm not commenting on exactly what happened there, but in those types of situations, at night when you're in an unfamiliar situation, it is time to get out of there, have your ride prearranged, your exit prearranged, and if you see there's a group or a potential for violence, go back the other way. Get back into wherever it was you came from, even if you have to go out, through the kitchen door, so to speak. Do not go out into this crowd and think, well, I hope everything's going to be all right. Nope. I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to put myself in, at least in a situation where I can't be surrounded, right? Um, it was a brutal situation to watch. It was absolutely terrifying. But the whole key is never allow yourself to get into that type of situation. And when you are, certainly shut this thing off, right? The last thing you should be doing is talking other than, hey, I just want to get out of here. I want nothing to do with this. I've got nothing, whatever it is, get yourself out of that situation as quickly as possible. And don't worry about trying to look like a tough guy.
Well, that also brings us to some situations that we have down here, just south of where I live here in Madison, Mississippi, is Jackson, Mississippi. And they have a high crime rate there. It was a high crime rate when I got here 20 years ago as a desk supervisor and dealing with the street gangs and all of that. And it has gotten progressively worse. Uh, Fortunately, the FBI office, after I'd been here about 3 years, we moved out of downtown and just got away from there. It just wasn't a conducive environment for anything. Uh, Carjackings. So we have a lot of those here in Jackson, primarily in Jackson. What's some things to consider and some tips and recommendations that you would have for our listeners and viewers here about carjacking, about how to limit the possibility of that happening, and then what to do if it looks like it's going to happen?
All right, so the best defense is a good offense, right? And what I mean by that is, think and be very strategic and be very intentional about where are you parking your car? Where is it going to be when you come back? What is the lighting conditions going to be? Are there going to be people around? When you're in traffic, okay, when you're at highway speed, very little chance that that's going to happen. But it's when you're in city traffic or in stop and go traffic or even cars around you, always leave yourself, if at all possible, right, at least a full car length in front of you, rather than being right up on the bumper of the next car. Don't worry about if somebody's going to cut in front of you in terms of traffic. Give yourself that acceleration lane and use that bullet, right? That several thousand pounds worth of steel and glass to get yourself out of there if you truly believe you're being carjacked. We see this all the time. Guys will, pull in front, get out of the car and come running back. It is time to go, right? Hammer down right through that, whether it's a car door or whatever. If it is truly a deadly force situation, if you believe there is imminent risk to serious death or bodily injury to yourself or others, you're covered by deadly force policy in almost every state, right? Now, you are going to be arrested and you are going to go to, trial if you hit somebody with your car, but you have to be able to articulate that. The best policy there is do everything you can, paying attention to not putting yourself in a position to be boxed in, not being in an area or in a place that is again high crime. Like I would not drive through an inner city if at all possible, right? That's where these things are happening. Plan your route. Plan your when you go to get gas. Don't go get gas at nighttime on a 2 or 3 pump station in a bad part of town. Get gas at I always tell people get gas at Costco. Get gas at a Buc-ee's where there's 400 people getting gas during the day. That type of thing. You have this indicator, right, that gives you about 400 to 600 miles where you can get some gas before the idiot light comes on. Plan accordingly, and certainly, for Pete's sake, don't get gas when you got loved ones in that car. So, a little bit of forethought, a little bit of strategy and intentionality about when you're vulnerable, because you're very vulnerable at a gas station. Very, right? If I wanted to predict with certainty where someone who has something of value, a car and a wallet to pay for the gas, that is easily portable, is going to be standing for a few minutes at a time, usually with their head up their own rear end, not paying any attention, right, on their phone or whatever. I just go hang out at a gas station. I could take a car all day long. Or even worse, putting the gas nozzle in, right off the interstate on a secluded gas station and going in to take a leak. You turn around, there's a guy standing there with a gun. I can't tell you how many of my clients have had that exact situation, and don't think for a second that that gas station attendant is going to help you. They might be in on it, right? They know for a fact you're literally caught with your pants down and there's nothing you can do. And by definition, you've got, some money. So just again, don't set yourself up for failure, but also be prepared to take decisive action if, all of your planning and all of your careful, forethought still could happen. You still could have that attempted. Just be prepared to recognize what's happening and take decisive action. Again, time and decisive action are what is almost certainly going to give you the best chance to achieve a positive outcome in a crisis.
Yeah, some things I would add to that, and it's something that I do in my family is if we stop to get gas, if I'm going to go to the bathroom, let's say I stop at a Pilot truck stop, we get some gas. It's pretty well lit. We usually pull away from the pumps. We pull up to the front. When I get out, my wife immediately locks the doors, and I tell her keep the doors locked until I get back. Preferably, I'd like her to move over to the driver's seat because if something is going to happen, if something bad's happening, my goal for her is to, especially if any of my kids are with her, is you guys get the heck out of here. Just go. But I'll take care of myself. I want you guys to be safe, and I'll meet up with you. The other thing is, and I tell people, is when you park your car somewhere, I'm glad you mentioned about the lighting and all of that. I say take note of the condition of your vehicle so that when you get back, if something looks different, If the surroundings look different, if you see people that are kind of sketchy, like you said, go away. You don't have to get in the car right away.
That's right.
Once you get in the car, immediately lock it and then crank the car up and be ready to move. Don't roll your window down. Don't unlock it. If somebody's approaching you, if you don't know that person, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
Well, I want to move on to some things that you and I, as retired FBI agents, everybody seems to think that we know everything about the FBI, and while we do know a lot from having worked multiple programs and done our time at headquarters, and I used to tell the younger agents, I recommend if I just think that the better desk supervisors are the ones that go to see how the sausage is being made at FBI headquarters. I think it's a rite of passage. No disrespect to the people that just get those stationary positions in the office, but I felt like I was better equipped coming from headquarters, having interacted with people at FBI headquarters who work in the programs that I was going to work in. But one of the questions I get asked here recently, and I just had a debate with a good friend of mine. We are friends. We disagree on some things. Is about these revelations with these Russiagate documents, and when I had people asking me questions about these burn bags that were found, and honestly, I was like, it doesn't really sound something that's just extraordinary to me. I mean, I knew with sea trash is what we call it, classified trash, probably a good 30% of the classified trash is not classified. It's just paper you want to get off your desk. And shredders cost a lot of money and they're hard to maintain. And putting stuff in a burn bag, it would not surprise me, people moving around the office and stuff, they store the burn bags in a room that are supposed to at some point be taken somewhere. And then maybe people transfer and they forget about it and then they discover it. I would be really surprised if when they go through those documents, if they find anything unique that wasn't already in the system. First of all, if it's something that's typed on a computer, it's recorded in the FBI system. There's going to be a record of it. But one of the things that came out about this Russiagate document, now I do believe that Comey and Brennan and those guys, my personal opinion, my professional opinion, based on experience, I do think that they violated the law. I do think that they violated the Constitution. I do think that they should be held accountable. I don't know what's going to happen from there. But one of the things that was brought up to me was this, well, now I'm starting to see this rise of shut down the FBI. And my response to that is always, well, what does that look like? What do you say to people that have come to you and said, there's been so much malfeasance in the FBI. And I try to tell them a lot of that, almost 99.9% of that was dealing with a handful of individuals at FBI headquarters. It really wasn't the street agents in the field. You get a search warrant, you get an arrest warrant, you've got to execute it. You may have some input, depending on your seniority in the office, about how that's going to be executed. The decision of whether or not to deploy a SWAT team, even you as a SWAT team leader, you're not making that decision. Your management is. So how do you handle these questions from people about shut down the FBI? It's just too corrupt to the core. We got to start over. What's your response to those type of people?
Well, I start by saying I do understand completely the frustration with everything that seems to be coming out. I get it. I absolutely get it. However, I do say this. Listen, at the end of the day, you're right, Chris. The generally speaking, the salacious stories and almost unbelievable malfeasance, seemingly, is done by a very small, now well placed, highly placed, seemingly, group of people. But make no mistake, the last 20 years and really almost put on steroids by social media in the last 5 to 10 years, this country, the United States of America, and really globally, society is absolutely just perseverating on destroying whether it's a celebrity, whether it's a private individual, or especially a monolithic, organization like the FBI that's been around 100 and almost 120 years now. What a story. People are breathless to just tear it down. Listen, I get it, right? It drives ratings. It drives coverage, it drives debate, it drives engagement. And remember, all of this equates to dollars for somebody, whether it's a YouTuber, whether it's a network anchor, whether it's a newspaper, whatever it is, it drives engagement. And people just love to think about and talk about and shout about, oh, let's destroy it. Well, you know, I get it. The bureau absolutely has to take its medicine and do a completely stem to stern inspection, make it as transparent as humanly possible. And I do like what I'm seeing so far with Director Patel and his new regime. Again, very new. Seems to be saying and doing the right things. That again, it's too early to tell what the results are going to be. Candidly, and I say this with all respect to Director Patel. I wish him all the best in the world. My only hesitation with him is he is clearly, and has been a close ally of the current president of the United States. And regardless of who that president is, the FBI director, in my humble opinion, right, needs to be someone who is seen as completely independent by everybody in the country, right? So the last one I remember that I felt was Louis Freeh. All right, so you and I came in under Judge Freeh, and like him or hate him, no one could say that he was anybody's lapdog, right? And I'm not saying that Director Patel is a lapdog. I'm not saying that at all, but he is clearly politically tied to President Trump, and I have all the respect in the world for the current regime. However, the Bureau needs to be seen as this above, right, and not part of, just completely, as does the DOJ, and we're not there. Unfortunately, the last 15 to 20 years, especially the last 10 years, has done more damage to our credibility, and really that partisan, that lack of independence has come to the forefront. I don't believe for a second that the rank and file, the vast majority of our BRIC agents, or even our most of our management, are partisan. They're incredible people. The hardest part about me leaving the FBI was leaving the people I worked with, because they were absolutely incredible, utterly devoted to the United States, utterly devoted to the Constitution of the United States, and literally swore an oath to lay down their life in defense of it. And I believe that. Now, people that say, let's tear down the FBI and start over, they don't know what they're talking about. And I say that because they don't know all of the work. And this always bothered me about the Bureau. They do such a poor job of highlighting those things that they do right. And there's so many, literally thousands of things a day that the Bureau, street agents, field offices are doing to keep Americans safer every single day, that nobody ever hears about, right? We're the worst when I say we, the Bureau, is really not great at putting out there those wins, so to speak. A lot of it's classified, a lot of it'll never see the light of day. But I don't want to seem like one of those shadowy guys, like, oh, trust me, there's lots going on. But I can tell you for certain what I saw, in my career. There were many, many, many times where, a Bureau investigation, and almost always they were in collaboration with state, federal, local law enforcement officers as well. But the Bureau was the one organization that had such reach, so many tools, and so much, financial wherewithal and experience to bring that together, that really made things, just with such a force multiplier. So I absolutely do not think that getting rid of the FBI. You and I served when and I give Director Mueller a lot of credit for keeping the FBI, because they wanted to break up the FBI right after 9/11, and that was the wrong call. The Bureau is uniquely suited with its criminal investigative power and prowess and tools, combined with the national security tools, is uniquely suited, right? We're still the only agency that can go into the FISA court. And people that don't understand what that FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, that's a very powerful, and unfortunately was abused, of course, you're right, as evidenced by the Russiagate stuff. Um, the Bureau still is by far the greatest national security and personal security agency that I'm aware of anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it's that's what I try to convey to people. And too often they paint with a broad brush. The first thing they do is they equate the malfeasance of the past under and I have differing views on Mueller. He yeah, he was able to kind of keep some things together when they wanted to split up the intelligence portion of it. I think he maybe overcorrected in that with focusing so much on intelligence-driven investigations
Yeah.
instead of, hey, let's just do it the way we've been doing it. We're good criminal investigators. And I noticed that when they started standing up things like the counterterrorism division and in working up that side, when I got to Washington field office, there was basically NS squads and criminal squads, and then a very small contingent of admin. That was
Yeah.
it.
Well,
Um,
I tell you, Chris, I'd listened to your interview with EAD Pehota, which I thought was great. Really interesting insights there. Along, to your point there, I believe it or not, got voluntold, as many of us do at FBI headquarters, to be part. You remember the old strategic execution team, the SET program that Mueller
mhm.
started? Yeah, I was part of that. And I was told, I was in inspection division at the time, and every division at headquarters had to, pony up somebody, and I was the junior guy. I was the feeder fish in the inspection division. So I, went down to SIOC for this meeting, had no idea what it was going to be, and I was told, "Yep, you are now, part of the SET team." And that was our attempt. It was Mueller's, attempt. We hired McKinsey Consulting Group and spent, a couple of years trying to reset, as you say, the Bureau to a more predictive, right, analyst-driven organization. The Achilles heel of all of that, I mean, it sounds like it might have been a great idea, and we said it from the very beginning. The FBI does not and still did not, certainly did not then, and does not now have an robust, mature, or large enough analytical cadre to do what they were being asked to do. They just didn't because, as you know, you spent time at FBI headquarters, yeah?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, yeah. So as you know, and I'm not knocking they were wonderful people, but it was not unusual for someone who had been a steno clerk, right? Someone who was in the typing pool, or someone who was a much lower level employee, had stayed at FBI headquarters for years, and they got promoted to MAPA, so a management and program analyst, a GS, 14, 15 sometimes. They're not an analyst. They were never trained as an analyst. That's a very highly trained and really important position that the vast majority of our senior analytical cadre, when I was there, had no qualifications for, right? They just weren't up to the task. I'm not knocking those people, but they were rewarded because they were good employees. They'd been around for years and years and years, and that's the only way they got extra pay, right? Was to get promoted into these positions. Well, as a result, our analytical cadre, at least back then, was woefully understaffed, undertrained, underprepared. And as soon as we did get a real all-star analyst, typically they would be, picked off by one of the other, agencies where they could go make more money or go into the private sector and make a lot more money. And so, this idea that the Bureau should be, using way more analytical tools and be guided by the analysts, in theory, that might have been a great idea if it was things were equal. We were not set up like the CIA. CIA is way more analyst heavy, totally different mission set than the traditional bureau. So, from the get-go, that entire supposition was doomed to fail simply because they didn't have the people to do it, and they couldn't attract and retain those people to do it.
Yeah, the other issue that I saw, I was there from the creation of the Directorate of Intelligence.
Oh yeah, the
I got
DI.
voluntold to go serve on multiple little boards and stuff for about 6 months when I was at headquarters.
Yep.
And it was a miserable experience. The other thing not just promoting people that didn't have the skill sets or enough training and experience to do those positions like the MAPAs. Then there was this push to, well, the agents are taking the traditional promotion, traditional leadership areas of being in charge of the criminal division and all. And then there was a push to have a lot of these people that have never been agents, have never carried the badge, that were getting promoted into deputy assistant director. I remember the first time I looked and saw that in the criminal division that, we had an agent AD, we had an agent DAD, the other DAD was a non-agent. And the only reason that was being done was to pacify a complaint that people in a different career path weren't getting these opportunities. Well, that's not the way that the Bureau is structured. I thought that was a big failure of Mueller. I thought it was exacerbated under Comey and Wray. It was really, and one of the recommendations I've made through my channels to Kash Patel, you've got an intelligence in charge person that's equivalent to the one step below the assistant director in charge at Washington field office. I mean, the thing that it used to frustrate some people. I mean, I'm blunt force conservative on here. I was blunt in the FBI. I can remember having a conversation with a young support person when I was in Washington field, and she was complaining because I had come into the FBI as an agent. And she said, well, it's not fair that, I've been here 5 more years than you have, but you make more money than I do. And I said, we're on different paths. I said, do you want to make what I make? And she said, sure. I said, well, here's what you need to do. You need to grow up in a small town like I did. You need to not go to college or get very little college, go into the military, get your college career out of the way over a long period of time, have a wife, a couple of kids, then graduate college, then apply for the Bureau, and then come into the Bureau and then go through Quantico for 16 weeks. And guess what? You'll be right where I'm at right now. Well, I don't want to do that. Well,
yeah, the other side of that is, do you want to go out and kick in a door and carry a gun and swear to protect someone? Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, it's frustrating.
The other blunt thing that I've told people, and I had this even in my later years in the FBI, which was, I want you to understand the makeup of what a special agent does. And this is not being braggadocious, not being arrogant. It's not having an ego. When I would have an analyst working with me, and if the analyst was getting frustrated with, the fact that of certain things that I was doing that this person wasn't going to be able to do, wasn't going to be able to go out on these search and arrest or a briefing with a dangerous, with a source in a dangerous area, I would say, they would say, well, I need to go because you're basically a tool of my investigative focus on this. So you're an asset to me. I'm directing intelligence directed investigations. And I said, let me tell you something. And you can take this up to the SAC and I'll take my hits. There is nothing that you do as an analyst that I cannot do. There's absolutely nothing that you do as an analyst that I can't do. There are multiple things that I do that you can't do. You can't do unless you go through the path that I went through. The reason you're here is to augment the investigation, to assist. The analysts, there were a number of analysts and great analysts that I worked with that embraced that, hey, we can be a team effort, but there has to be one person in charge, and that's the case agent. It can't be, I'm not having an SIA, a special supervisory intelligence analyst. I'm not having an IA direct me on what I go out and do in the path of the investigation, because I'm not only dealing with the intelligence that's coming in, I'm also having to comport that with the law and predication for offenses and being able to get in court and prove or disprove allegations. There's a lot more to it than that, and it used to frustrate me with that promotion. I think that is something that I have recommended to Kash through back channels. It is, you really are going to have to extract that. I think that was an overstepping of Mueller. He did a lot of things we were overstepping. He brought in people from the private sector that didn't know the structure of the FBI. They horrifically failed in positions. He brought them in as ADs directly from the private sector. the FBI, it's unique. When I had that conversation today with my good friend, and we're still good friends, even though we disagree, is it looks different when you're on the inside. I said, you remember, Cash and Dan were big about tear down the FBI. It's corrupt. It's irredeemable. It shouldn't be here. The only way to fix this thing is to just shut it down and start over. Now that they're on the inside, they have a different perspective because they realize the real world threats, the things that you never hear about that the agents are doing out there. The guys that work the violent crimes against children cases that are mandated to go through psychological counseling because of the things that they encounter. You never hear about these on the outside. You take that away, there's not another agency that's out there that can take it. Plus, if you were to shut down the FBI, what, 12, 13, 14,000 agents? Where are you going to start over? There's not another agency that can absorb that mission. And you're telling me that you're going to get rid of all of these FBI agents. You're not going to hire any of them. They have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do the job. I just don't think they have enough understanding and comprehension of what that looks like. Before I let you go out of here, I do want to, before we get out of this, if you've got some other things you want to say about what we were just talking about, I do want you to talk about your book and why people need to go out right now, click on the link on your X page that you just created. I'm kind of shocked that you just got on X here in the last couple of months. But tell them about your book, why, what it can offer to them. That I think it's definitely, it's worth 10 times what you're charging for it.
I appreciate it, Chris, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the book. I did want to mention, one of the things that I do worry about right now with the Bureau, and again, I'm all for, cleaning it up, get air the dirty laundry. Let's get it fixed so that all Americans, or at least most Americans, feel a sense of confidence in that. I do believe, and this is not a knock against, Deputy Director Bongino. I think he's a fine man. I don't know him. I've never met him. I've listened to his show occasionally, and obviously a smart man. My worry, though, is, you've got Director Patel, who is, highly qualified for the job, right, based on his background and experience, and very, very smart man. I worry that he doesn't have the deputy director that he needs, because traditionally, and maybe this is, people will say, well, that's the whole problem with the Bureau, is it's always been the same. Traditionally, though, the mission of the deputy director is someone that has come up through the ranks, understands from a street agent, ace, squad supervisor, ASAC, section chief, all the way to SAC, and then AD, in theory, everything. Someone who's been through the battles and can coach or sort of advise the director, hey, boss, if you make this decision, here's how it's going to play with the field. These are the deputy director generally is plugged in pretty well with the leadership around the Bureau, and can really act as a wise counsel, right? This experienced advisor to the director, right? And I almost feel like Director Patel is almost hamstrung by not having someone like that. Now, he may have somebody in that inner circle that is maybe helping Deputy Director Bongino, but I just feel like, listen, man, nothing against Mr. Bongino. He just doesn't have the experience he's never served as an FBI agent, and so really can't serve as that experienced counsel. Now, I'm sure that he can bring lots of good perspective. He's a very smart man, and had some time with the Secret Service. But I worry that particular role might not be right for him, right? Like I so desperately want Director Patel to succeed. I want him to have every chance to succeed. And I hope he has someone in there that is advising him, not just the yes man type of, I used to call them the bobblehead committee, right? They would just agree to everything the director said. He needs someone in there in that role of the deputy director to sort of play counterpoint sometimes, or to be able to draw on extensive experience operationally within the Bureau. And candidly, Deputy Director Bongino just doesn't have that. Again, no disrespect to the man, he just doesn't have. It's like it'd be like me trying to go be the deputy director for the for the Secret Service. No clue whatsoever. Never did it. I couldn't speak to the rank and file. So I do worry about that. That's my only concern currently. I hope it works out. I'm really encouraged by what I'm seeing. Um, keep up the great work, guys. But they've got some headwinds that I hope they can get through. Now
Yeah,
the
talking about Dan Bongino, Patel wasn't my first choice for director. Bongino definitely wasn't my first choice for deputy director. The thing that I wanted to get away from was this this farm of bringing in directors of the FBI that were high level attorneys at DOJ.
Yep.
I thought that was a mistake. I thought Mueller. I didn't think that Mueller was a good director. I had personal interaction with him. I don't know if you did. He is
I'm
not
good.
a nice man. There is
He's
nothing
not a
in
warm and
DOJ.
fuzzy, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, and a lot of his is ego driven about, it's he had a lot of people up there that they they were just terrified to disagree with him because of the way he would treat them. And
Yeah.
I countered him down in Jackson when he came down. We can talk about that another day. I thought Comey, he just, woof, it something just seemed odd about him from the get-go. It wasn't just because he's freakishly tall. It was just something about the way that he spoke. It kind of made me feel uneasy about him. Uh, and then Ray, I dealt with him a number of times, had some one-on-one conversations with him, especially in the last couple of years before I retired. I just felt like he was kind of an empty suit. He really wasn't there to affect any change. He didn't command the room. Uh, the thing that I've pushed, and a lot of the people in my circle seem to share it, is you got to get back to a foundation of the Constitution. It's literally the one thing that you swear an oath to protect and defend. And I think we kind of got away from that with some of the training. I did ask a friend of mine that's connected up in headquarters to get me some data, and the majority of the FBI agents right now came in post 9/11. A significant number. I was surprised at the number of FBI agents that were actually born after 9/11,
Wow.
which
That's scary. Yeah.
that is that is scary. That was one of the things that kind of pushed me that it was time to retire when we started getting in brand new agents that I'm like, I'm old enough to be this person's father, easily old enough to be this person's father.
Well,
Um,
24, 25 years old is just not old enough to be an agent. I'm sorry. You do not have the life experience requisite to be an effective agent at 24, 25 years old. There are a few exceptions, but I truly believe, I told you about it took me a while to get in, right? Kept
yeah,
swinging. But there is a good reason why the Bureau wants someone who has, a college degree. And then, the minimum is 3 years after, college, right? That full time. They really want 5 or 6, maybe 8 years of full time work experience so that you have that perspective. You change tremendously as a person, as a grown up, from the time you're 25 to the time you're 30. There's a lot of growing up that happens right there. And so, as an FBI agent, you have tremendous authority, you have tremendous power to destroy people's lives if you act, rashly or irresponsibly. And so, I to hear that we have agents that are walking around that were born after September 11th, 2001 is quite frankly a little bit disturbing to me. That's I hope they're doing great, but that's pretty young.
yeah. The life experience thing. There's a guy, a friend of my son's. My oldest son's 29, and a kid that they went to school together. He's applying for the FBI, and he's gotten through the phase one process. And I said, okay, well, at some point you're going to look at going down before this review panel of senior agents. I don't think it's changed since I left 6 years ago, but it's 15 questions. It's 1 hour. They're going to ask you these questions. And what I was told from my recruiter was there was a certain page in the booklet that had the core values. And he said, think of a couple of things from each of those core values in your life. A situation you were in, what actions did you take, and what was the result? And I noticed when I went down, there were five of us that came in that were recruited out of the Jackson division. There was myself, another guy, I don't know if you know him, Chris Bowles. He's a
Remember the name?
bomb guy. So Chris was a DEA agent before. And so we're both in our 30s and we're applying to come into the FBI. The other three were accountants that were 24, 25 years old. And they had never faced adversity in their life. They had not
Right.
supervised people. They've not had to deal with difficult situations. So when I went in to answer the questions, I was in there the entire hour. Uh, I came out, one of the accountants was out there waiting on me. And I said, "Did you not go in?" He goes, "Well, yeah, I went in." He said, "You were in there a long time." I said, "It's 15 questions, 4 minutes, probably a minute and a half to ask the question, 30 seconds to reflect. That gives you 2 minutes to answer. Maybe a minute and a half and then clarify your remarks." And he said, "You answered all the questions?" And I'm like, "Ooh."
Oh, that
You
doesn't
know,
feel good. Yeah.
if you can't demonstrate that ability, because you are going to be put into situations where you have to make a decision in an instance that you may have to take a human life.
Mhm.
And that is a significant responsibility. And if you don't have the maturity that you've not faced adversity, you learn more from your failures and your mistakes and things that challenge you than you do from your just easy successes. So I'd like to see that. I'm glad to hear you say that. I'd like to see them raise it to about 28 or 30. The
Yeah.
problem we're going to have is some people kind of get into their careers and they don't want to leave. I do believe it should be a calling of something you want to do. It's not something you go into, well, I'm going to do this for a few years and then go do something else. To me, somebody that had dreamed of doing it since I was 6 years old, it's kind of offensive
Well,
to
I can
me.
I can I can tell you, finishing at Quantico, my office is right there in Hogan's Alley, right there by the flagpole across the street from the Biograph. And, I'd watch these kids come running over every morning and, into Hogan's Alley. And, as the unit chief there, I'd always made it a point to visit with as many classes as I could and, observe them and talk to them and just kind of see I was absolutely shocked by, I'm sure your class was the same. When, my class, everyone just assumed that you'd be retiring from the FBI, right? You're going to do 20 plus years, no question about it. The majority of the new agents when I left just a few years ago had no intention of staying for 20. They were going to do a couple of years with the FBI, get it on their resume, get that TS clearance, top secret clearance, and parlay that into a higher paying job on the outside. So the mindset has changed so much that it is really disturbing, and I don't think bodes well for the long term, of the mission. I hope we can get back to people aspiring to, yeah, I'm going to make this my career, my lifestyle, as you say, my calling, because that's what it needs to be. You're really only effective as a true case agent after about 10 years of street work and lessons learned and learning from other senior agents. If you're punching out after 5 years, you have not made a significant contribution to the United States. I promise you that.
Yeah, I noticed something, and I think here after I left, I went back and did some contract work teaching for the FBI down in Fredericksburg, and the students that were coming through there, we had a couple of students come through that were prior military. Interestingly, and I didn't know how this worked. I think because they didn't want to admit it that there was that maturity that was lacking with some of the newer agents.
Yep.
There was one guy, he came through and I'm looking at him, I'm like, "Dude, you look like you're about my age." I said, "How old are you?" He said, "I'm 51." I said, "How long
Wow.
have you been in the FBI?" He said, "2 years." I said, "2 years?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I was a Navy SEAL and I spent this time in the Navy, and I left there and I came in through this new program that they've got." And he said, "I am going to have to serve into my 70s. They've got this waiver." You know, if you're having to fish in the pond of people that have already done a 20, 30-year career in the military so that you can bring some maturity back into the FBI, I wish they would have admitted that then. I tried to kind of point that out when I was teaching down there, and I ended up giving up that contracting thing. It was a bit frustrating with, you had a little bit of the wokeism, but it really wasn't from as much from the students that were going through the course. Most of them had been in anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. That were coming through this human operations course.
Oh yeah, I
It was
remember that
from some
course.
of the
Sure.
some of the junior staff people that were there that had bought into some of the woke stuff that was still going on under Comey and Ray. And it was very evident. And here I come in, this strong constitutionalist with 20 plus years in the FBI and 13 years in the military and 5 years with another agency. And I'm all about, guys, you've got a great opportunity to reset the FBI. You can get back to focusing on the Constitution. And I'm like a champion for the Constitution. That did not go over well. And I got humbled pretty quick because I realized I'm just a contractor. I'm here to fill in. I'm not an agent anymore. I'm trying to bring this experience in. It really caused a problem. I'm hoping that Dan and Cash can reset that with the training that I've said, and I wrote this in an article, every bit of the FBI should be focused on the Constitution first, from white collar crime classes at the academy to, of course, your law classes, even firearms. Everything has to have a connection to the Constitution. It's literally the one thing that you swear an oath to do. Rob, before we let you go, tell us about the book.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I tell you, man, it's the book is the culmination of something that I've been thinking about for years. I wrote it for people to have just a place to start. As the director of education and training for the USCCA, and now the head of personal public safety for the organization. I got to work with literally thousands of civilians and even law enforcement, families. Sometimes it's hard to have that conversation. Where do you start talking to your loved ones about just basic safety? There's nothing in this book that is, a secret, or there's no, sometimes top 10 secrets, from the FBI's tactical guy. These are tips and just, things that concepts and principles that I've tried to boil down to the most basic lessons I could to help articulate to anyone who is interested in making themselves a little bit safer, right? I saw as a young person when my grandfather died, my grandmother and grandfather very close to them. He died when I was about 14, and I saw the absolute transformation, the devastation that it had on my grandmother, who had been a really active, vivacious, full of life person. As soon as he passed, her protector was gone, and so she felt, unsafe, right? She just didn't feel safe anymore. And what I saw was, and I told you earlier that, I had some uncles who were in law enforcement. They were able to give her a gun and train her. She had never shot a gun before, but they trained her. They said, listen, you're living in this house by yourself. You got to have something to protect yourself. And what I saw as a young person was that transformation of, okay, now I have a plan and I have an opportunity and the means to protect myself in an extreme situation, right? And just the return of the joy of living, right? Just getting rid of that I call it the tyranny of fear that just crushes people. And there are literally millions of Americans out there living in fear because they just have this unease about what's happening in the United States today. I can tell you, being at Quantico and when the defund the police thing all kicked off, and I saw the immediate devastating effect that's had on our first responders. People have to understand in this country that, yes, the police are coming to help you, but it is a far cry from what it was just a few years ago. The average police response time in the United States has doubled in the last several years. And so you and me and everyone that's listening are on their own for, on average, twice as long as they used to be. And what are you going to do, right? Do you have a plan? Do you have not only the plan, but the means and the capacity to defend yourself effectively, right? So I wrote this book. It's almost written like, remember the old dummies books, right? Like Tax for Dummies and History. I didn't want to call it, Security for Dummies, but it's very small chunks of, all right, little lessons that you can apply to your daily life, whether it's helping your kid go off to college, whether it's, developing a workplace safety plan, safety out in public, fortifying your home or your apartment, that type of thing. There's checklists in there. I tried to make it as simple as possible, but entertaining and engaging so that you can have this conversation and a reference. Everything in there is as legally, sound and justifiable as I could possibly make it. just to have those things where, my ultimate hope is that someone reads this book and says, "Oh, I never thought of that particular facet of my personal safety." There are going to be people that are very experienced, but maybe there's one thing in there. It could be they've never thought of it at all. This is a great place to start, I hope. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. That's what I wrote it for, just to start that conversation, because I know there's so many people out there that are concerned about, their safety and the safety of their loved ones.
Well, tell them where they can get the book, and then tell them where they can find out more about the U.S. Concealed Carry Association.
Awesome. Yeah. So we set up a landing page. The name of the book is The Practical Guide to Personal Security. The website is thepracticalsecurityguide.com. Practicalsecurityguide.com. It's available on Amazon, right? It just takes you right to the Amazon landing page. Order on an Amazon ebook, hard copy book, and then of course I'm getting ready to do the Audible version of it next month. So I always thought that'd be kind of fun. USCCA, of course, we have uscca.com. If you are interested in in-person classes, online classes, we got an incredible e-learning library for members. Again, 900,000 members across the country, uscca.com. If you go to that and enter your zip code, it'll spit out a listing of literally hundreds of classes happening every week all over the country, almost all of which are free to attend. So you can go listen to whether it's, personal security, situational awareness, how to do first aid, how to build a bug out bag, literally anything having to do with personal security. We teach those classes all over the country.
Well, that is great. I actually went to the website today, and it picked up my location here and said there's one coming up in South Haven, Mississippi. So I encourage people to go to the website and look into it. Well, Rob, thanks for coming to the show. I appreciate it. We're definitely going to have you on again. I'm sure we're going to get some great feedback from this, and hopefully we can get you guys. You said 900,000. Let's get you over 1 million at U.S. Concealed Carry Association. And my best to you, and thanks again for doing this. Proud to connect with you, and appreciate your time.
Chris, thank you. Thanks for what you do. Look forward to the next time.
All right, thanks, bud. All right, Mr. Producer, let's take it back to me, and we're going to do a couple of shout outs here. And the first one I've got up is looking to see if it's going to be on the screen now, is a good friend of mine, Andrew Gasser. Andrew is a new radio show host here in Mississippi. He's on WYAB. I actually sat in for him as a guest host this past Tuesday and had Rob on the show to talk about that. We got some great feedback from that. People really interested in it. And that's why we wanted to bring Rob onto the podcast. I encourage you to follow Andrew. This is his X page here. Andrew has an achievement that I am greatly jealous of. He made it through 7 times on Rush Limbaugh's show to talk, and you'll hear that in his opening credits for his show. Cited 7 times on the EIB University, where the learning never stops. Andrew's a great guy, has a great show. Encourage you to listen to it, wyab.com. You can stream it anywhere. The next we've got here, and I want to give this shout out, my good friend Ada Nestor. So last night, Ada got this surprise. Ada is one of the hosts on the Conservative Voice on WWDB out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've been on their show a number of times. I've grown to be close. I consider them dear friends. Ada Nestor and Gary Heasley, the host there. But Ada, she has been doing a deep dive on the problems that we're having right now with this Russiagate and the what she says here, the coup d'etat, dealing with Obama and Brennan and all of that. And it is an amazing thing. I encourage you to seek her out on Substack. Out of all of the political people that write on Substack, she was ranked number 55 by the people that read the things on Substack. And apparently President Trump does, because late last night, I guess when he was up, he took a look at what Ada had and he put it out. He truthed it on Truth Social, and Ada got this notification. I just happened to get up. You'll find once you get into your 60s, like I am right now, that you have to get up a couple of times during the night. And I look and I see that Ada had posted this, that President Trump had given her a shout out, and I just immediately forwarded that to everybody I could think of. And I jokingly said on here, not to flex, but actually to flex, I'm good friends with Ada Nestor, and now she has got, her name has been linked into the current administration. The last thing I want to have here, and it's not a shout out so much, is this: if you want to meet me in person and you happen to be in the Tampa area, Tampa, Florida area, I am flying out Monday morning, early, dark 30 Monday morning, to Tampa, Florida. I've been invited by this Representative Jenna Parsons Malika. She has set up a roundtable discussion dealing with foreign threats facing Florida. A mutual friend of ours, I'm not going to say who that person is, because let's just say that person's connected. She had reached out and asked for a recommendation of somebody to be on this panel, somebody meeting the criteria, I guess, that I have with my background in counterintelligence and desk supervisor in the FBI, my FBI career, military, all of that. And we talked on the phone, and they offered me an opportunity to come down there. It's not a speaking engagement fee type thing. They are covering my hotel and airfare getting down there. I look forward to getting down there and meeting with them. So if you want to meet me in person on Tuesday, August 5th, there's going to be this roundtable discussion here at the Oxford Exchange in Tampa, Florida. I don't think there's any charge or anything to go to it. There's supposed to be a number of state representatives on this roundtable discussion. I think the Florida Attorney General may also be on this roundtable discussion, and we'll have audience questions and things like that. I look forward to getting down there and connecting with these individuals. All right, Mr. Producer, we can go back to me, and I'll get some parting thoughts here as we head off into the weekend, or finishing up the weekend. It's been a busy week here with guest hosting on the radio on Tuesday, getting prepared for this travel down to Tampa, Florida, leaving out on Monday, and then on Tuesday, on this roundtable discussion. Got up at super early this morning. It's something I've forced myself to get in the habit of setting my alarm for about 5:30 in the morning and getting up and just kind of seizing the day. The first thing that I like to do is go ahead and hit the gym. It almost feels like it's my second home, but it is something that I encourage for people as you get older. Definitely seek out some type of exercise. I'm having a good time with it. Make some great friends at the gym. Feel like I'm getting stronger, not as at the rate that I remember from my 20s, but it has been fun. It's something that I've said on this show before. I got my first grandchild, a granddaughter, coming in September, and I want to be around for the long haul. Plus, I want to be in a position to help protect her. Not that her dad cannot. He is a state champion power lifter, and he can handle himself. The other thing I want to leave you with, and these were things that I talked about on the radio, is what can you do to affect the change? We see a lot of these large follower podcasters, these investigative reporters out there, trying to pick apart the FBI, trying to pick apart anything that's going on that's in the news. A lot of that has to do with them seeking to remunerate themselves. Look up the word remunerate with the information that they have. And I think they're holding people to an unreasonable standard. The new administration's only been in there for 7 months now, and that is not enough time to affect the change that's needed over the malfeasance that went on, heck, just in the last 8 to 10 years. So be a little patient with them on that. I think that if you really want to affect change, some people will tell you run for office. Some people will tell you, vote your congressman out. The thing, and I will try to push this almost every show, is exercise that First Amendment right. Now, most people, when you ask them about the First Amendment rights, they will tell you, oh, freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. They may even get freedom of association in there, but they rarely will tell you the freedom to petition and seek redress of grievances. That is your opportunity to confront, to challenge, to ask the questions of your representative. If your representative is not taking the time to meet with you, to discuss with you, is not holding town halls, is spending more of their time out on the campaign trail, going to donor sponsored events, or going to establishment type events, and they're not spending the time with you, you need to be asking those questions of them. It's one of the things. I went to a breakfast this morning over in Rankin County. It's Republican-ish, I guess is the way I would say. Uh, the individuals that spoke there running primarily for the local offices. It gives you a chance to get out and shake hands and kind of meet some people. And one of the things that I kind of made myself known here, especially since I retired, is being able to civilly and cogently challenge my representatives of, what are you doing? Why are you not representing me? You're going to see, as we go into this campaign season going into 2026, you're going to see a lot of our representatives out there trying to cloak themselves in the successes of Donald Trump. The one question that I would beg you to ask is, what were you doing the 4 years that he wasn't in office? So when they talk about the border, they talk about crime, DEI, when they talk about, foreign affairs, things like that, what exactly were they doing the 4 years that Trump wasn't there? They can say, I stand with President Trump on securing the border. Well, where were you the last 4 years? I've asked my representative, why not do the one thing that you can do that will get the attention? I can tell you from 33 years in government, 13 years military, 20 plus with the FBI. I can tell you from that 33 years, there's two things that those representatives fear: is losing an election and being held accountable in public. But the one thing that they can do to affect change, and it will strike fear into the heads of these agencies, is if you tell them, if you're not going to comport yourself according to the will of the people, the representatives, we're going to withhold your funding. Not reduce it, not reduce the increase. We're just going to stop it. If you notice the USAID stuff, that got stopped, and you're starting to see the after effects of it. A lot of these things are surprising even to me after 33 years of government, when I see some of the things, institutions, private sector institutions that are falling because of this pullback of these government funds, or these elimination of government funds. You just had a notification that PBS is going to go away. Well, if the Center for Public Broadcasting is this great thing, they should be able to compete in the marketplace of ideas. X is competing in the marketplace of ideas right now, and people are getting their opinions out there. The only thing I would caution you on is be very selective of who you're listening to out there. If individuals, there's a thing called confirmation bias. You can tell when people are asking questions, especially these reporters or these journalists, when they're asking questions, if they're coming from a position where I have already made my decision, I just want to extract the information that supports my decision, or are they asking and gathering information so that you, the citizen, can make those decisions? With your elected representatives, are they representing you, your values? You've got to be able to challenge them on that. If you're not going to use that First Amendment right to petition and seek redress, it doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter where your money goes or anything like that. It doesn't matter whether you vote or not. You're giving them the opportunity. When they get elected, they're there to represent you. They're not there to insert their beliefs in ideas in what they think is best. You need to be able to challenge them on that. Go to the local events. Walk up and talk to them. If they won't talk to you, tell everybody they refuse to talk to you. If they do talk to you, tell everybody what they said. If they agree with you, tell everybody that. If they disagree, tell everybody that. But I've seen more and more, and I called out on the radio, and I call out here with my representatives in Mississippi. My congressman and I disagree on a lot of things. I don't think that he has been a good representative of the state of Mississippi or our values, or actually taken some type of, action to represent us. It seems to be more of a follower. I don't have a lot of confidence in our two senators. They tend to represent the donor class that's out there, and I've called them out on that. I do question the things going on in our state politics. I'm not the one with all the answers, but I have questions, and I expect for my representatives to answer those questions. And if they don't, I'll point out that they're not. But I also would like to encourage others to ask those questions. If you're nervous about it, do it a couple of times. the nervousness will go away. It's like any type of public speaking. Well, anyway, we're going to cut this off for right now. If you got ideas, if you got some individuals that you'd love to hear from, you would be surprised at the number of people out there that you think are these famous people. And it's odd in the short time that I've just been on social media out here with X, the people that have come into my circle that I've gotten to know, and having them on the air to talk and tell their stories. And I try to bring the people on here that maybe the other shows aren't bringing on or don't even think to bring on. I'm going to look forward to trying to get my friend Ada Nestor on here to talk about what went on with her being highlighted by President Trump, to talk about her research. She brings the receipts. I encourage you to go to her Substack and read it. But anyway, it is getting late. It is 6:34 here in Madison, Mississippi. I've still got a stack of contract work I've got to do over there. I've got to get my study in before I head out on Monday. If you are in the Tampa, Florida area or can drive to it, I encourage you to come out. Take the time to chat with me. Ask me any questions you want. I'm pretty blunt force conservative. Still undefeated on the constitutional debate stage. If you got somebody out there that wants to challenge it, bring it up. We'll take it. I don't shy away from it. But thank you again for watching the Blunt Force Conservative podcast. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to my producer, Chris Allen, for putting all this stuff together and finally convincing me to take this jump into this area. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the Blunt Force Conservative podcast. Thank you for listening.